Labbe. He's a Browns reporter for Cleveland.com to talk about the Browns and the Broncos this Sunday. Don, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, how are you doing?
Dan, this is Woody. Let's start out with what we were just talking about. Do you think that the Browns, because they throw the football and rely on it so much, and don't have much of a running game, to be frank about it, that they will double and triple team Von Miller? I don't know how you do that play after play after play. I think they'll try and chip block him with tight ends. But what do you think will be the Browns' approach to DeMarcus Ware's not in the game, but Shaquille Barrett has done a really great job. What do you think the Browns' approach will be against the pressure from the outside rushers?
I actually spent some time talking to some of their offensive linemen this week, and one of the things they emphasized is actually trying to win one-on-one matchups. So I don't know how much double teaming they're going to do. They do, kind of build their scheme a little bit around double teaming guys, but the thing about playing Denver, as you guys know, is they don't necessarily need to blitz to bring pressure. They can do it with that front seven. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Browns approach all those guys that are coming after Josh McCown. It's going to be on the running backs to get chips in and give him time. But, I think it's going to come down to, can those offensive linemen for the Browns win one-on-one matchups against guys?
Yeah, before we get to the other areas, to continue on the offensive line for just a second, the Browns have used a lot of their draft choices. They've really worked hard to develop an offensive line, and I would say from a distance, and you're there every day, that's one of the real strengths, if not the major strength of the Browns.
It's at least one of the perceived strengths, and like you said, they've invested going back to 2007. They took Joe Thomas, third overall in the draft. They've got 2 first-round picks on that line. They've got a couple second-round picks. They even used their second first-round pick this year on a backup offensive lineman. This is a team with a lot of other needs, but they decided to do that with Cameron Irving. Look, against a team like Denver, that's when this offensive line, needs to live up to those expectations.
Yeah, Cameron Irving was a guy that I was really interested in. I thought he was a versatile guy. Maybe that's why they used him. They could move him around the end, move him around on the line. How has he worked out? I'm curious from my own personal standpoint, because when I was looking at the offensive linemen they should draft, I thought about Eric Flowers, who's had a good year, and I really haven't kept up with Cameron.
I'd rather have Kyrie Irving from Cleveland, frankly.
Yeah, well, your guys' guess is as good as mine with how good Cameron Irving is, because he hasn't played much. He's been an extra offensive lineman a couple times on the goal line, but it's looking like a curious draft choice, almost as if they were hedging their bets against Alex Mack possibly leaving after this season. He's their the Browns Pro Bowl center. So we haven't seen a lot of Cameron Irving. The coaches say that he's progressing, he's doing what he's supposed to do, but there's no real game film, no real game reps to work off of.
Dan Labbe of Cleveland.com is our guest. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, Joe Thomas has been the best tackle in the game. Is he still in peak performance? And I always get the impression, because he defends Johnny Manziel, and he talks a lot, and I don't mean like he's a trash talker, but is he a real leader of that team? Has he developed into the guy on offense who's really the top guy?
Yeah, Joe Thomas is a future Hall of Famer. Not many guys like that have come through here since 1999. And you know what? He talks like it in the locker room. He's very confident. When he talks to reporters, he's not afraid to say anything. He's definitely a guy that, in the media, you can go to him and talk to him. You can tell the players in the locker room respect him. It's a little strange when, left tackle is sort of the face of a franchise, but that's kind of the situation the Browns have.
Let's talk about crap now. Let's go to the other side. In looking at it, studying it yesterday, I don't think there's anybody in the Browns front seven that could make the Broncos starting lineup. Is that a fair or a just totally unjust opinion?
I think it's a fair opinion. I think it speaks to, one, how good the Broncos are, and two, how rough things have been for the Browns. I think there's some individual pieces on the Browns that are good. Desmond Bryant is still a good defensive end. Danny Shelton at nose tackle has a chance to be good. You look at a couple of the linebackers. Paul Kruger had 11 sacks last year, but it's hard for me to argue looking at the talent that Denver has and looking at the talent the Browns have and say that any of those guys could crack Denver's starting lineup. I think that's a fair statement.
Dan Labbe is our guest from Cleveland.com, and all of our live guests are brought to you by Papa John's. Dan, is Cleveland good enough in other aspects, any other aspect of the game, that if McCown does not throw for 300, 320, 350 yards, the Browns can win this game?
I think, look, they came into this year, and I heard you guys talking about this while I was on hold. They came into this year wanting to be a strong running team. That has not worked out. That being said, they did get the running game going a little bit in the second half against Baltimore and overtime last week. They rushed for over 70 yards. They really like Isaiah Crowell in the backfield. Duke Johnson has been really good for them, catching the football out of the backfield. He and Gary Barnidge have really been their best receiving threats. But look, if Josh McCown doesn't throw for 300 yards this week, and it's not likely that he's going to, the Browns are going to be scrambling a little bit if they continue to struggle running the football. They're going to have to find a way to establish that run game.
Yeah, and I go back to what I said, that in looking at the Browns, 181 yards against the Ravens last week, rushing. Against the Raiders, they took Murray, who I kind of like, and allowed him, I think, about 129 yards from Oakland, and they ended up with 166, 165. The only successful game running holding a team under, and I'm not looking at notes, so forgive me, Dan, if I'm wrong about any of these, but it seems to me like Chargers was the only team they've held to under 100 yards rushing, but they're playing against a team that is the worst rushing team in football. I don't guess there was I don't know that there was a question there, Dan, but just take it and run with it.
I guess something has to give this week. The Browns have been absolutely brutal against the run. You're right. The only teams they've had any sort of success against has been San Diego, and that was a game really where the Chargers were throwing the ball around a lot too. This is a 2-year trend for the Browns. They were bad against the run last year. They're bad against the run this year. They've got to figure out how to stop it. And Danny Shelton was the guy they picked to try and clog up the middle. And he's a rookie. He's had mixed results. The defensive line isn't really doing a great job getting penetration. The linebackers aren't doing a lot either. The Browns have to go into this game as a defense, show a little pride and say, look, we're not going to be the team that the Broncos get right against. Can they do that? I mean, after 16 games last year and now 5 this year, it's hard to say that they have that ability.
Yeah, teams have been putting 7 and 8 players in the box, and I would guess the Browns are going to try and do that, particularly with an injury problem in the secondary. But then you run the risk of, no pun intended, you run the risk that Peyton Manning might get well in this game. He might be the guy that throws for 300 yards. It's sort of like a double-edged sword, it would seem to me. How do the Browns actually beat the Broncos?
Well, I think they have to, one, do something they haven't done much of, and that's play really good defense. The Broncos haven't really been able to score a lot either. If the Browns can, score enough points and play better defense as they've been playing, maybe that's how they can do it. It would have to be a low-scoring game, something like 17-13, something like that. Yeah. And they'd have to hope that maybe, like you said, Peyton Manning could go out and be the quarterback who throws for 300 yards, but at the same time, maybe this is a game where Peyton Manning, all of the criticisms that have been building and, the questions about his arm and that, maybe this is a game where those things come to a head and the Browns force some turnovers. I don't know. This is a strange game to kind of look at and figure out who's going to win.
It's a good point because the Broncos have been in close games all season long. So if you go into the fourth quarter and the Browns can figure out a way to keep it close and it's 19-16 or something like that, I don't really know anything about your kicker. Is he a guy that can win the game?
He has, like the kicker in Denver, he has not missed a kick this year. He's a young guy. He had to actually win a battle here in the offseason to kind of get the job. His name is Travis Coons. And he finally got a chance to show what he could do in clutch situations last week. He kicked the game-winning field goal against the Ravens. Not real sure on the range on his leg just yet. We haven't really had to see him get extended with that leg. But, as far as reliability, he's gone from being a question mark to a guy that I think a lot of fans here trust.
Dan, really appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you afterwards, all right?
Okay, thanks for having me.
All right, Dan Labbe of Cleveland.com. He covers the Browns. And that segment brought to you by John Elway Cadillac at Park Meadows, Colorado's #1 Cadillac dealer.